I am Dr. Mohammad Rafi, Associate Professor, Department of Cybersecurity at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. Today I want to discuss about the network programming and management, in which the content is shut down the functions and poll functions. Here, shutdown function and poll function. The shutdown of the function which disabling the data receiving from the socket, and the transmission of the data through a socket, and can be used on all type of the socket. Mainly these are the shutdown of the functions can be disabled. Once if the shutdown function is activated, now we can't receive the data from the sockets. The shutdown of the functions does not close the socket, but which won't receive the data. Whenever these shutdown functions is active, which won't receive the data. Any resources that should be the attached to the sockets will not be freed until the closing the socket of the function is called. Shutdown function will be called. Whenever it is a socket will not be free until the close socket function is called. This shutdown function which ensures that all the data is sent and received on a connected socket before it is closed. So the program, whatever the program we are written in a Unix language, that should be use the shutdown functions. This is the shutdown function which is the closing the connection before calling the closed socket function to closing the other socket. Once if we closing the other socket here, we can't able to receive the data from the secondary other devices. Here it is a primary device. This is a primary device. So, and number of the secondary devices. Number of the secondary devices, that is a client 1 and client 2 and client 3. So all the devices can be connected to the primary devices. It is a primary device. Primary device. Once if you shut down, the shutdown function is activating here at the primary device. So here the primary device, now we can arrange the one socket, and secondary device, these are all the secondary device. At the secondary device side also, secondary device side also, now we can arrange the socket. Here from this secondary device socket, once the shut down the primary device, or if you shut down the secondary device, immediately which disabling the service activities. Whatever the services are providing from primary device to the secondary device here, now will stop the service activities. So this is about the shutdown of the function. Once if the shutdown of the function is activating, which we can't receive the data from the primary device to secondary other device. So this is about the setup of the function. Next, see here. For example, if you calling the shutdown, so which is disabling the transmission of data. If you call the shutdown, which is disabling the transmission of data, and call the receive function until 0 or socket error is the return. So these are all the examples for shutting down the signals. That means receiving and transmitting signals have been SNB disabling. Calling the close socket function. By calling the close the socket function, now we can activate the shutdown function at the primary device side and secondary device side. and calling the shutdown, which is disabling the transmission of the data at primary device side and secondary device other side. Here the system, whatever the system now we are taking, so that can be which is including the Windows socket. Now Windows socket which containing the following the shutdown the function the syntax. That is, the syntax is now we can write it as function shutdown. So this is the code. This is a code in a Unix operating system. That means here we can write the code it as function shutdown yes socket how colon, that is a integer, and integer external, that data, that is external data can be we have taken from the Windows operating system. Here arguments, number of arguments can be utilized while shutdowning the function is activating. The first argument now we are considering it as which is passing to the shutdown function is the socket, that you want to disable the receiving of the data from and or disabling the transmission of the data through. That means here the first argument, whenever the first the argument which is passed to the shutdown function, here at primary device side and secondary device side, the socket which is the disabling. Once the socket is disabled at primary device side and secondary device side, so which is not receiving the data and which is not transmitting through the socket, data cannot be transmitted through the socket. The second argument, if you take the second argument, this once if you pass the second argument to the shutdown function, now which is specifies whether you want to disable the receiving of data, the transmission of data, or both, and can have the these values. That means shutdown receives, receiving once if it is disabled, receiving is shutting down, and shutdown sending, both shutdown, both receiving and sending can be disabled. So these the values can be considering while transmitting the data in a second argument. Here is receiving, shutdown receiving. The meaning of the shutdown the receiving, that means here which receives the functions on the socket, that will be disallowing. Data transmission can be disallowed. This shutdown receives which disallow the data the receiving. That means which has no effect on the lower the protocol for transmission control protocol. So if there is still data is queued on the socket waiting to be received, or data arrives subsequently, the connection is reset, since the data cannot be delivered to the user. For example, here the user datagram protocol UDP the sockets, now incoming datagrams are accepted and queued. In no case will be the ICMP error packet will be the generating. SD send, subsequent other calls to the send the function. That means here the data sending is disabled from the primary device to the secondary other devices. See here for TCP sockets, that is finished, FIN will be the sent after all data is sent or acknowledged by the receiver. SD set on both, that means here receiving and sending, both will be the disabled. Both sending and receiving it will be the disabled. Once if it is disabled, the primary device and secondary device which can't send the data and which can't receive the data. Once if it is activated, set down both this is the key, it is activated here, both the sender and receiver both can't able to provide the services. And if we take return values, return value in a shutdown function which returns the value of a integer type that indicates whether the call was successful. If it is call was successful, once the shutdown function it is successful, immediately which returns the some value, return 0, return 1, return -1, like this some values will be the return. A value of 0, that means here that a call is succeeded. A value of socket that is a error which indicate that the call is failed. And in this the case now we can use the WSA get lost error function. So this WSA get lost error function which retrieves the code that identify the error that caused the call to failing. Here this constant, so linger, SD receiver, SD send, SD both and socket error, so it will be declared in the system by including the Windows socket .imc. By using this the file now that can be declared. Here closing one of the TCP connection, send FIN to the server, but leave the socket as a descriptor and open for other reading. And the limitations with the close other function. Limitations with close other functions are decrementing the file descriptor, which refers the count and closes the socket only if the count reaches to the 0. If the count reaches to the 0, that means that transaction is completed. From primary device to the secondary device. Once if the transaction is completed, now which indicates the 0, which reaches the count should reaches the 0. With the shutdown, the function can be initiate the transmission control protocol. Normally, which is the connection at the termination regarding of the reference count. Here, if you see reading or writing the operations can be performed in the primary device to secondary device. Secondary device now we can refer it as a client. Primary device now we can consider as a server. With the shutdown function we can tell other end that we are done sending, although that end might have more data to send us. Here write means here now we are sending the data. We are sending the data to server. So once if you write from the client side, automatically corresponding the server reading the data. Whatever the data is sent by the client, that the data can be read by the server. Here is the return is greater than 0. Return value greater than 0. And writing. Here is the finished. Shutdown is the finished and read the returns is a 0. Return is 0 means the data transmission is completed between the client and server. The finished signal can be sent to the server. Along with the finished signal, along with the acknowledgement now which is sending to the client, the data again here based on the whatever the responses is received by the client, the server sending the response, sending the whatever request is received by the client, the server whatever the request is received by the client and now which is sending the respond. Sending the respond here, for sending response now the server perform the writing operation. Here is writing the data and once if it is write the data which a read, that means the return is greater than 0, return greater than 0, it is perform the reading operation and acknowledgement of the data and finished. If it is the finished, that means the respond is completed between the client and the server. So this is a communication between the primary device and secondary device. Both the here Now we'll use the shutdown. That means here the finalizing. Shutdown, the function will be acting like this. Here is the syntax for shutdown in a Unix operating the system. Generally, we can use hash include system.h or socket.h into shutdown into socket file descriptor into how to, that is which is return 0 if it is okay, or if it is okay 0 return 0 means here the transaction is the completed. If it is okay means here the transaction is the completed between client and server. If it is -1, that means here the error is occurred while the transmitting the data or file from sender to the receiver. Here is how to argumented by using the shutdown. Here is the RD shutdown writing. That means receiving the data, writing the data. Generally shut or D, that means read half of the connection is closed, and any data in a received buffer is discarded. Any data is received, that means here this call is acknowledged along with the data and then discarded. Reading and writing. Writing means both can be. Here is the reading and writing. It is only the reading. It is a writing. WR means writing. Shutdown, writing. Write half of the connection, close. Half should be the closed. Half close means now we can closing the connection at a primary device side, or we can disclose the connection at a primary device side, secondary, or any one side. Now we are closing the connection. This is the meaning of half of the connection closed. Data is a socket. Sending the buffer that will be sent, which is followed by the connection at the termination, and reading, writing, both will be the closed. So whenever it is shut down, this will be arise while communicating between these two devices. Now both will be closed. Here these are the arguments. Now generally we can utilize while performing the shutdown function. And if we see further, send and receives on a socket prototypes, that means hash include shutdown int s int how. So that means here, that is it had done the transaction. Shutdown transactions can be completed. No more sends or allowed on the socket. Once if you shut down the primary device or secondary device at a primary side socket or secondary side sockets, once if it is shut down, no more sends or receives are allowed. But still want to receive the data on it here, or vice versa. How can do this one? After shutting down, if you want to receive the data, how will be received? That means here, when you close a socket at the descriptor, it is closes both the sides of the sockets for reading and writing, and freeze the socket at the descriptors. If you just want to close one side or other side, now we can use the shutdown call. As for the parameters, now yes is obviously the socket. You want to perform the actions on what action that can be specified with the how the parameters are utilizing for performing the shutdown actions. How can we shut down the reading operation to preventing further receives? Shut down writing to prohibit the further sends, or shut down that can be reading, writing to both can be done. Here is shutdown does not free up the socket that defiled the descriptor. you still have to the eventually closing the socket both the at a primary device or at a client side. It has successfully shut down. So this is a rarely used the system calls. And if you see return value returns 0 on success or -1 on error, and error number will be set accordingly. For example, here S is equals to socket, that is a PFO inet socket, streaming socket, which is other 0. 0 means here that indicates successfully transmitted the data. Do -1 means the error will be arised. Do some sending and stuff in here. Now that we are done, don't allow any more sends. So here these are the shutdown reading while performing the reading and writing operations. See, simply now we can use for shutting down here. Now close other function also. By using close function, if we close here, so server side and the client side both the which is disabling the transmission. That means the connectivity will be closed. So this is a close other function also now we can utilize. Poll other function. Poll other function, what it is doing means here, this is the poll function now, particular the device, it will be select the particular secondary the device. Now if you are transmitting the data from primary device to the secondary devices, these are the poll function now specified device will be selected. For that the specified the device now, this is the poll function which is the transmitting the data to the selected specified the device. Poll which provides the functionality, that is that should be the similar to the select. But here the poll function now which is giving the additional information when dealing with the streamings. I input output the streaming devices. That is a header file. Now we are using the function is hash include poll.header file. This is the poll.header file. Now by using this the function poll the function, the specified the device can be, we are identifying, selecting and transmitting the selected file. The syntax for this file is poll struct poll file descriptor. File descriptor is array type which is pointing to the particular device. Pointer type means particular file, particular secondary device now which is the pointing, and unassigned long NFT and int time route. Now here is the which returns the count of the ready descriptor, that is a 0 on timeout, -1 on a error. If it is 0 which indicates time, the data transmission time is out, that means time is completed. -1 is the transmission error is arise while we are going to transmitting the data. Now the transmission error is if it is a transmission error is arise between the primary device and the secondary device, here the error will be arise, that is a -1 which returns the -1. If you see the arguments, the first argument, that means here file the descriptor array. So it is a pointer to the first element of an array of the structure. Now each element is full file descriptor structure that specifies the conditions that can be tested for a given descriptor, file descriptor. So that is a struct full fd int fd, that is a descriptor to the check. Short events, that means events of the interest on file descriptor. Short events, that means events that occurred on a file descriptor. So these are all the arguments, and this is a structure. This is a structure for the poll fd. That means poll fd, which is a particular specified the file the descriptor can be selected in a secondary devices, and which is supporting for the data the transmission from primary device to secondary device. We see the conditions to be the tested, it will be the specified by the event members, and the function which will be returns the status for that the descriptors in the corresponding event number. So here is the data which is having two variables per file as a descriptor. One a value and one is a result. Now we can avoid the value result arguments. The middle three arguments for select or value result. Each of these are the two members is the composed of one or more bits that can be specify a certain condition. Here is, if you see the table for this one, the conditions are poll, polling, polo. Here number of the conditions is given. These are the table. Here the first the four constants. That means deal with the input. The next three deal with the output, and the final three deal with the error. Here the constants, whatever the first the four here is given four constants, three constants. Now this the first the four constants which is a normal or priority banding the data that can be read, and normally data can be read, and priority based banding the data that can be read. High priority data can be read first, and low priority data can be read last. And here in these by using these three other functions now, normal data can be written. Here is the normal data can be written here. The priority band data can be written here. That's why here now we can say here the first four which is dealing with the inputs. Here is the first four are the inputs, and next three dealing with the output, and the final three dealing with the error. The final three cannot be sent in a events, but are always here which is returns in a event when the corresponding condition is exist at the each and every the constants. With regards of the TCP and UDP as a socket, while transmitting the data, now we have to consider some other conditions in a polling to return the specified event. Unfortunately, here portable operating system interface, that is POSIX, which leaves many options. That means here many holes which is nothing but a optional way to return some other condition. Based on this and the condition, now we can define the poles. That means that selected the particular the device. Here the condition is here all regular the TCP data and UDP data is considered normally. Transmission control protocol, which out of the band data is that should be considered as a priority band. When the real half of the transmission control protocol the connection that will be closed. That means it will be when it is closing, whenever the receiving is finished, then the TCP connection will be closed. This is also here consider the normal the data, and subsequent read operations will returns. The presence of an error for the TCP the connection can be considered either normal data or error. That is the polar. So in either case, the subsequent read will be which returns the -1. With error number set to the appropriate value, this and handles the conditions such as timeout. If you see the availability of the new connections on a listening socket, that can be considered either normal data or the priority data. Most the implementations can be considered. This is a normal data. The completions of a non-blocking connect is considered. To make a socket writable, the number of elements in the array of structure that can be specified by the number of file the descriptor arguments. The timeout argument now which is specifying how long the function is waiting for the returning. A positive value which specifies the number of milliseconds to which is waiting for the responding, for receiving or sending the data. The constant here is the wait forever, INFTIM. So is defined to be the negative value. You see the values from the pole function minus 1. If the pole function value is a minus 1, if an error is occurred, the pole function value which indicates minus 1 if error is occurred. If it is a 0, the pole function value is a 0. If no descriptors are ready, so before the timer the expires. Otherwise here it is the number of other descriptors, file descriptors that have a non-zero or event members. If you are no longer interested in a particular descriptor, we just set the file as a descriptor member of the whole file descriptor structure. So that should be the negative values. Then the event member is ignored. Event member is ignored at the server other side or at the client side. The event member is set to be the 0 on returns. That means 0 on return means if no descriptors are ready, no events are ready, so before the timer the expires. And so this is about the shutdown function and pole other function. Here is the main agenda of the shutdown function and pole function is by using the shutdown other function. Now we can disabling the receiving and transmitting the data at the both sender side and receiver side. By using the pole function now we can select the device, particular the identified the device can be selected, and we can shut down in the system. Shutdowning the system means here from selected device now we can disabling the data. Here is these are the reference the books, textbooks now for this network programming and network management the principle and practices. Unix network programming. These two textbooks are the is better for the network programming, and these are the reference books. Internet network with TCP/IP volume 3, and the web references for network programming.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.